Okay, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. We appreciate you joining us. My name is Isabella Perry and I'm going to be your moderator. This presentation will be discussing From Quote to Certification, Your Journey with PJRFSI. Today's presentation will be presented by Heather Kyle. We have Chris Reno. So some quick housekeeping. There will be a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions for our presenters, please use the question portion of the Teams control panel. The slides and the recording will be available on our website after this presentation. Any additional questions, please contact us through our website. Now, Chris will take it away discussing today's topic.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much, Isabella. So Heather is actually going to run the slides. So Heather, if you'll go ahead and switch over to slide 2 and we'll get started. So perfect. Who we are. As a global leader in food safety certification and auditing. So what exactly does that mean? Who are or what are some of our accreditations? So as many of you on the call know that are currently certified with us to one standard or another, we offer a full suite of GFSI certification audits. So that's going to be SQF, BRC, Global Gap. We've also got unaccredited things like HACCP, GMP, organic. Our team is dedicated to client success and long-term partnership. We are trusted by food manufacturers, processors, and retailers worldwide. Next slide, please. So our footprint, or where we do business, in the U.S., our headquarters, of course, is in Troy, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. We've got offices in Dallas, Texas as well. We've got offices in Chicago, Phoenix, San Diego, Milwaukee, Louisville. As you can see from this map, there's really not an area of the globe that we don't have some sort of representation and we can work with you in. So you can see down on the very bottom some of our international satellite offices, Santiago, Chile, and Lima, Peru. I guess the point of today's meeting, and as far as an overview, being on the sales team, I talk to clients a lot, and we really try to set the expectations of, hey, this is going to be the next step. And when you get done signing the contract, then it's, this is going to happen and this. But we do understand that at the same time, it's a lot. Sometimes it feels like you're drinking through the fire hose in this industry with, the changing of regulations and changes at your certification body. So we wanted to do this webinar as a way to, really kind of show you behind the scenes what happens and some helpful tips. So an overview, obviously, we're, excuse me, we're rated 9.5 out of 10 stars on superior customer service and focus. We do, of course, have a training suite, things that we do online through web-based applications. We've got multilingual capabilities. We like to do quarterly newsletters and industry updates. So, for instance, as many of you know, SQF is making a revision next year. So we'll have, all of the details in our quarterly newsletters, as well as webinars on the new changes. I think we mentioned on an earlier slide, but on the ground in over 60 countries, 15 years is the average auditor experience in the industry. And we work with, at least kind of currently, around 466 auditors globally. So, when we talk about working in the entire food chain or in the entire supply chain, sometimes we don't always kind of take a step back and think about, really what that means or who that is. So we wanted to highlight just some of the customers that we work with in the supply chain, companies that work with imports, farms, marketing agencies or brokers. We work with obviously a ton of food processors and retailers. We also work with companies that do export. So if your business is looking at entering new markets, exporting into new markets, please reach out to us and find out what we can do to help you there. And then wholesale distributors. Perfect. That's great. And then the last one I was going to say is wholesale distributors. So that's going to be more like, importers and selling to cold chain storage and things like that. So our services. So I think I've kind of briefly mentioned auditing and certification. So what that is, it's what we think, of course, third-party risk-based certifications of products and systems provides a solid infrastructure for organizations to maximize business performance, increase their efficiency, and drive continual improvement, and of course, manage risk. So under the customer specific and second party auditing, this is where you're going to find the unaccredited things like GMP or compliance audits. So protect your brand and minimizes recalls by building a robust supplier end-to-end program, which will improve your supplier processes, mitigate risks, and then establish confidence in your product and your vision is protected. And then the last thing I'll touch on our services is the supply chain solutions. So, companies' supply chain is very complex and need to manage these risks globally has never been more important. Everyone in our team here is kind of nerdy about this industry. We're following the recalls. We sort of talk about the things that we see out in the marketplace. And so, if you're working with someone like Heather, you'll obviously see in today's call that, she's got a wealth of knowledge on this stuff. But there's going to be times where you might have a question and, Heather might not know the right answer, but she's going to know the person to reach out to, put you in touch with, to get you that right answer.
Okay, so every client's certification journey follows these 6 key stages. First one is a request for quote, application and review, scheduling the audit, conducting the audit, completing your corrective actions, and then a certificate decision. So I'll take you through each one of these steps and explain what you can expect along the way. So the first step is simple. You request a quote. So we'll ask for basic details like your company name, address, number of employees, site scope, and the standard you're pursuing. Once we have that, we'll provide a transparent, customized pricing. Typically within a few business days, from the very beginning, you'll be assigned a dedicated project manager who will support you through the entire process.
So, Heather, I wanted to kind of touch on that very briefly. So, in the quoting process, obviously we're getting a lot of information from them. There are a couple of things that are really crucial in terms of what we need to calculate the audit duration. So I know that today we're talking about what to expect in year one, but after they become a client and then they're looking at getting certified in the next year, I know when you or your team reaches out to them to sort of ask them, hey, have there been any changes since last year? The 3 things, can you kind of sort of touch on the important topics that you need to notify your certification body if there are any changes to those things, because it could affect your audit time.
Yeah, definitely. So the first one is employee count. If your employee count has changed from last year, our schedulers will give you what we currently have in our system, and then you can just let them know if that's changed. And then facility size, if you have either added more or if you have decreased your facility size. And then the last one is your HACCP plans, the number of HACCP plans you have. That could also increase or decrease depending on what products you are manufacturing.
So that would be like if you decide to launch a new product line that includes different allergens and you've got to add a new HACCP program or, HACCP family program. That's when you want to notify your scheduler because, obviously that's going to take a little bit more time in the audit compared to, of course, the previous year. So I just wanted to touch on that really quickly while you were talking about the quoting aspect of it.
So the next step is a application review. So this ensures your site and processes are ready and eligible for certification. It also helps us determine your audit duration, scope, and if there's any other specific requirements. Once everything looks good, your project moves forward to the scheduling phase. Once your application is approved, your project manager will work with you to schedule your audit. So lead times can vary depending on the standard and audit type, but we always confirm that you're ready before finalizing the dates. We are also flexible with multi-sites or seasonal operations, ensuring your audit aligns smoothly with your business schedule. After the audit, you'll receive a detailed report. If there's any nonconformities found by your auditor, you'll have the opportunity to address them promptly. Your auditor and project manager will guide you through the closure process. Once everything is completed, the certificate decision is made and your electronic certificate is issued, that is a major milestone worth celebrating.
So really quickly on the audit itself, one thing that I always like to remind customers and, site specific managers, also remember that there is a course of action if you disagree with a finding. When I'm talking to new customers and, sort of hearing, hey, why are you making a change? Why are you looking for new certification bodies? One of the more common things is, well, I didn't like my auditor. I didn't feel like the auditor was, really judging our performance based on the right criteria, and all sorts of things that you might hear. And so, I just want to make sure and also highlight that you don't have to wait until the audit is over. There is a challenge that, if you're not familiar with, please reach out to us and ask us, that process. We'd be more than happy to share it with you. Obviously, we want everyone to do well on their audits, but there's going to be a tough but fair sort of mentality behind it. So just understand that there are corrective actions, after the fact. There's also a process in place for during the audit itself.
So each standard, the timeline is varied. So here's a general idea of the average timelines for each standard. For SQF, it's between 12 and 16 weeks after your audit takes place. BRC is 10 to 14 weeks. Global Gap is 8 to 12 weeks. And the compliance standards, non-accredited, HACCP, GMPs, and the CGMPs are between 6 and 10 weeks after the audit takes place.
Now, Heather, when they receive this certificate, can you just really quickly talk about the date? Does the date go post date back to the date of their audit, or is the new date on the certificate the date that it's awarded, which might be 12 weeks after the actual inspection audit?
Yeah, so the date on your certificate is when our executive committee has approved your audit report from the auditor after nonconformances have been completed. And the biggest factor affecting your timeline is how quickly your corrective actions are completed and approved by your auditor and the executive committee. If you're currently certified with another certification body, transferring to PJRFSI is simple. All we will need is your current certificate, current audit report, and if there's any corrective action details. When planned correctly, there's no certification gaps, and our dedicated transfer team makes the process seamless from start to finish. As a client of PJRFSI, you can expect exceptional support every step of the way. You'll have direct access to your project manager, timely reminders, and helpful tools to maintain compliance. We're not just here for your initial certification. We're here to help you stay certified, confident, and continuously improving. Our value extends beyond the certificate itself. We offer educational webinars, updates on standard revisions, and an ongoing client spotlight program that highlights success stories from our certified clients. Our goal is to build a lasting partnership that helps your organization thrive. Okay, now let's open the floor for questions, whether you'd like to discuss certification timelines, audit readiness, or the transfer process. Feel free to ask.
Yeah, so I'll jump in really quick. We had one question that came through a second ago in the Q&A from Mr. Carl Kinsley. So Carl wanted to know, is there a plus minus total that is allowed before advising, the FSI staff of employee change? So, the short answer is no. any changes plus or minus one, we would love to know about. There are going to be plenty of times where, you add a few employees and it does not change your audit duration in any way at all. Everything will remain the same. However, there's not really a hard and fast rule like every 10 employees or anything like that, because the way that it works is, years ago, they actually had a published duration calculator that you could go out and look in and plug your own information in and see, that the audit duration was correct. They don't really have that anymore, but the numbers change. So, for instance, when you're talking fewer employees, a difference in headcount can actually make a difference. If you go from 15 to 20, that's a much bigger change and it might add a few hours to your time. But if you're at 101 and you go to 110, it might not make any change at all. So just, like I said, case by case. Heather, if you'll sort of mention from your side on that as well. But, I think just it's a safe bet to just communicate any changes, that new year with the audit.
Yeah, exactly what Chris Reno said. He covered it all.
Perfect. So I think one other thing that I'd like to maybe just mention, we talked a little bit about timelines, especially the timeline for the certification post audit. So can we talk maybe a little bit about the timelines in that first part? If you could even maybe go back to that original slide that showed the sort of the discussion topics for today, and we can try to put some numbers with the actual, time it takes to go from a quote. I'm sorry, Heather, like I think it was
Which one?
slide number 9.
9?
So this is a really important piece because this is sort of the process of the handoff from sales to the back of the house, or our operations team. So I maybe we could just go through this really quickly and talk about estimated timelines, if you will. So request for quote, this is essentially when you're reaching out to us the first time. This might be, hey, we're adding a new site and we need to get them certified, or we purchased a new site, or this is the first time we've ever had certification. So you're kind of coming into it from a place of, uh, I guess, not having a certification. So with any of those, they're all going to follow a really basic process, if you will. So when you first reach out to your sales rep, we have a lot of internal kind of KPIs, if you will, on how we handle our customer service. So one of the things is a 24-hour rule. If you're reaching out to me as your sales rep and you've got a question about something, our expectation is that we're going to get back to you within 24 hours. So you send us information that says you want to get a quote. Within 24 hours, you are in the process of the application and review. And so with the application, that's sort of the onboarding documents, right? That's where you send us your information, your proposed scope, your employee count, all of that information we're gathering. So you can probably say that we could get that done in the same day, as far as that back and forth information. So realistically, the onboarding process can be completed if, let's say you were in a rush to get this done, can probably be completed in as little as 48 hours. A lot of times I'll hear from customers that will say, hey, listen, we're in a big hurry to get this done. And then when I ask them what their timeline is, they tell me it's, 4 months away. And in our world, we hear all the time where people are like, hey, can you be here, tomorrow? So time is a very relative thing based on what your needs are going to be. But, the first 2 bullet points, realistically, this is initial conversation, initial, phone call meeting. And so we can get it done quickly in as little as a couple of days, but a lot of times you'll see just in the natural, order of business that this might drag on for like a week, right? Because there might be some questions about your employee count and you've got to go to someone else. And, there's just kind of some back and forth. So a couple days on that initial process. And then once we get a quote out in your hand, obviously you've got a lot of control over the timeline at that point. But let's say that you immediately sign it and you want to start looking into, scheduling your audit. So now we can take that initial 2 days that we sort of talked about for the onboarding, and you've got your contract signed, and now it's being handed off to Heather's team and in operations. So again, we kind of talk about that. They have 24 hours, to respond, to make that first contact, something like a welcome email and a list of some documents maybe that we're going to collect. At that point, Heather, I'm just going to use Heather for all of this, but Heather's going to say, what's your timeline? What's your target for your audit? And you might say that it's going to be January 1st. Well, at that point, Heather reaches out to the auditors and verifies with their schedule and gets that information back. We would love to be able to get this back, same day, instant. It's always not always the case, right? Sometimes it can be a little bit of a delay because the auditors are out in the field and, maybe they don't have their calendar completely updated. It's not always that easy. So it could be a few more days there. And then there's going to be an acknowledgement form. So this is where, again, you say you want your audit December the 1st. Heather reaches out to the auditors, the next morning, an auditor comes back and says, yes, I'm available to take that audit. Heather's team will send out what we call an acknowledgement form. That's just kind of the final piece that says, yes, December 1st is the time that we verbally discussed or emailed about. I'm agreeing to that and I'm signing it, sort of locking that date in. So once you have that locked in, it's sort of a hurry up and wait. Let's use the same scenario. We get through the request for quote, the application, the quote issuance, all of that in the first, 48 hours. Then within another few days, you've got your audit date confirmed. Now what? Between now and the audit itself, there's really not anything more that, needs to go on, I guess, between the two. You're ready for your audit. And at that point, the onboarding sort of, all of this process based is completed and you're ready to go. Obviously, if you have questions, you can reach out to us at any point. But, there's really not any contact from our team, to you in that, that 3 weeks, if you will. Now, before the audit takes place, you will, of course, get, a call, reached out, email. I'm not sure. I know every auditor is a little different. But you will be contacted by the auditor with just final instructions. Hey, I like to get started at exactly 8. If you're planning on snacks, I'm gluten-free, right? You'll get that sort of last bit of detailed information, and then you're right into your audit. So, when at the end of the year, we do a lot of these client surveys and, we have a lot of conversations with our current customers just to say, hey, what can we do better? What can we do differently? And, what we get a lot back is, hey, my sales guy was great. They were all over me until I signed my contract, and then I didn't really hear anything. And, I think that we need to do, of course, myself included, need to do a little better job of explaining those expectations on the front end, just so, you're not anxiously awaiting, something final. Once you get that acknowledgement and you sign off on that, you're pretty much good to go and finished with everything that we're going to be requesting of you. Sometimes there might be, let's say SQF, for instance, has got a database, that you've got to go out and apply to. If there's anything like that that is standard specific, you'll of course get that information with the welcome email and that sort of first packet. So, if you think that maybe you've missed something or you think that there's a database that you're supposed to sign up for, don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask us, and we'll be sure and help you, get hooked up with that. But that's really all that I had. I just wanted to put some actual numbers, to that page. Granted, every situation and client is different. There's really not a one size fits all. Obviously, we want to be as accommodating as possible. So if there's ever a time that you need something special to happen, let us know, and we'll do our best to make it happen for you. But that's all that I have today. I don't see any more questions coming in through the Q&A, so we'll finish up a little bit early. If, after this meeting, if you're back in your office and you think of something, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Obviously, you can reach out to directly to your sales rep. You can reach out through our website. We've also got a link-based application that's in our email tagline. It's like a chat now feature. So if you're out in a manufacturing environment and it's really loud, or maybe you don't have great reception and you want to send us just a quick message, you can also use that. So I think right now we don't have any additional webinars planned through the end of the year. We will, of course, reconvene in December for our end of the year meetings and training, and we'll come up with our strategy for next year for webinars. So if any of you have any ideas or things that you would like us to present, bring on experts for, please don't hesitate to share that with us as well. And with that, thank you all for attending today. Heather, thank you so much for the great content, and we'll see you guys next time.